toxic sister crashed my wedding to claim my babies didn't count since I had them before marriage. What she did next was so unhinged that the police got involved. Hey everyone. Before we dive in, I have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and ensures you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. I-24F got married about a week ago, and unfortunately, things went quite haywire. Let me start right from the beginning. I have an older sister, let's call her Stacy, 26F, and we have always had intense sibling rivalry. I'm serious about it. We hated each other growing up because all we wanted to do was one-up each other. We never got along. Even as we grew older, we continued to loathe each other. We made sure never to outwardly show people how much we disliked each other, but it was all there, just under the surface. She and I didn't talk to each other, even when we were living together, and would only put on a show for our family members whenever they would come over. But even our parents knew that we didn't like each other, and never once did they try to fix things between us. I guess in a way, that's what led to a lot of things going wrong eventually, but I'll come to that later. She moved out when she was 18 for college, and I was really relieved. That meant I could finally be myself around the house, instead of constantly walking on eggshells because of her. She would only come back for the holidays and brag about how great her life was since she was going to one of the best business schools in the state. I was a little jealous, but my only priority was to work harder than her and get into someplace better, which I did. I got into an Ivy League school, which was a pretty huge slap in the face for her. I was celebrated in a much bigger way than she ever was. I thought getting into an Ivy League school would put an end to our competition, but that didn't happen. One day, she just announced that she was starting her own business, and with some help from my dad, she actually did it. I don't know if it was luck or just hard work, but it took off. A couple of years ago, she moved to Japan to expand the technology aspect of her business. It was a grand success, and our parents were proud of her. That was about 2 years ago, and since then she's been living in Japan. Unfortunately, things weren't going well for me after I graduated from college, and the fact that Stacy was accomplishing so much just added salt to the wound. I found a job, but it was nowhere near as glamorous or satisfying as whatever she was doing. So I quit soon after I joined. That turned out to be a huge mistake. I know it because I should have stayed there and worked my way up. But I was being a fool and competing with my sister when, in fact, I should have been focusing on myself and my career. It was a really stupid move and I regret it, but it's done now. After I quit my job, I went through a phase where I was just waiting for something to fall into my lap. When it didn't happen, I started getting depressed. It didn't help that Stacy was doing great and that my parents were constantly bragging about her business. I hated it, but I couldn't even say anything without sounding bitter and jealous. Even though I was feeling both of those things, I had to hide it whenever I met with my family and pretend to be happy for Stacy. Anything other than happiness was considered unacceptable. That was around the time I met my husband, Jackson, 25M. I'm so glad I did because meeting him practically changed my life. It had been about 6 months since I quit my job and had been waiting for a better opportunity with no luck. Like I said, I was really depressed and frustrated. I downloaded a dating app, not exactly looking for anything serious, just something to distract me from how badly things were going. I was struggling to cover rent and basic necessities. I had to depend on my parents for money. They would send me money every month, and I had some savings left from when I was working, but it wasn't enough. I was really struggling. My parents would help me out, and I would promise every month to return the money as soon as I could. I could always hear the disappointment in their voices, and it drove me crazy. I knew I wasn't doing my best, and it was hard to come to terms with the fact that Stacy was thriving while I was a disappointment. So I used dating apps and went on random dates with men I didn't even like to distract myself. For a while it worked. Most were only interested in hookups. That changed after I matched with Jackson. He was really interesting to talk to. He had been a straight-A student in school, but chose to go to culinary school afterward. When we matched, he was working in a restaurant. He was funny, charming, and just the right amount of masculine. I told him I wasn't looking for anything serious, but he told me up front that he was dating to marry. I liked his honesty and decided to give it a try, not knowing what was in store. We went out for a first date, and it went incredibly well. It felt like we'd known each other for years. It was the best date I'd ever had. With him, I felt like I didn't have to prove anything. It was the first time I'd felt that way, and it was a nice change. We clicked. I decided to give our relationship a real chance. After a few more dates, 3 months into the relationship, I found out I was pregnant. I was mostly worried about how Jackson would react. He already knew everything about me, including the dysfunctional relationship with my sister. But Jackson made me want to be a better person, a person of my own. To my surprise, when I told him I was pregnant, he was incredibly supportive. He said it was my body and my choice, and he would support me either way. When I told him I wanted to keep the baby, he was thrilled. He confessed that he had wanted that too, but didn't want to pressure me. We decided to wait on marriage and get to know each other better while preparing to become parents. A couple of weeks later, we found out we were having twins. Jackson moved in with me, and I met his parents soon after. They were lovely and treated all their kids equally. It was the first time I saw what a healthy family looked like. But I was skeptical about introducing Jackson to my family. I thought my parents would disapprove of my life choices, having kids out of wedlock with a man I'd just met and living with him. But when I was 4 months pregnant and starting to show, I had no choice. I invited my parents over and told them everything with Jackson by my side. To my shock, they were actually happy. My mom nearly fainted when I said I was having twins. They even threw me a party and proudly announced they were going to be grandparents. They were fine with Jackson and me not getting married right away. I was grateful for their support. It made pregnancy and everything afterward easier, especially because they helped with the kids while Jackson and I worked. I had a heart-to-heart with them about how I didn't expect their support, and they admitted that they hadn't been great parents. They thought pushing me and Stacy to compete would help us succeed, but they realized it had backfired. They knew I had quit my job to outdo Stacy and felt responsible. They told me I didn't need to compete anymore. I was enough. They were proud of both of us. It was a much-needed conversation. They told me they had tried to have the same talk with Stacy, but it hadn't gone well. She laughed it off, saying I was a sore loser and that they were just trying to make me feel better. She didn't believe they meant it and insisted she was the more successful one. She thought the pregnancy was a sign of my failure, knocked up before marriage, living with a man I barely knew. She sent backhanded compliments and snide remarks in the family group chat constantly, just to tear me down. It got to a point where I wanted to leave the chat. My parents begged me to stay. They wanted to be better parents and keep the family together. They promised to talk to Stacy again during Christmas when she would be back in person. But unfortunately, she was too far gone by then. Her sole aim in life, at that point, first to humiliate me and make me feel as small as she could. She was insufferable that year. Even though she had been quite annoying for the past couple of years before that as well because of her successful business, that year was much worse. Not only had she just come back from Japan, but she had also come back knowing that I was pregnant and not even close to her in terms of success and wealth, and she did not let go of even one opportunity to remind us of that. The entire time, she was just bragging about herself and shooting me looks, or even asking me if I was not happy for her. It was just really awkward and uncomfortable, and I had to leave the party early because I was trying really hard not to lose my temper or end up crying in front of everyone. So after that Christmas party, my parents tried to talk to Stacy so she would cut it out, but instead she said that she had worked hard to get where she is and she wasn't going to let me take that away from her. So she was going to brag about it all she wanted, and I would just have to deal with it. That is the point where I decided that I would cut ties with her, and I left the group. My parents also believed that it was for the best. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, and I had no idea what she had been up to. But recently I heard from a couple of my relatives that she was back from Japan with a baby. I heard about it for the first time around 4 weeks ago, and apparently it was a miracle baby who was just 2 months old. My parents told me that they had been on video calls with her several times before she came back and had never noticed anything, let alone that she was pregnant. She said that she had wanted it to be a surprise for everyone and said that she had become a mother and had recently gotten married to her husband, the father of her children, in a private ceremony just a year ago. Now she was finally ready to talk about it. The timing was nothing less than suspicious, because pretty much everybody in the family knew that I was supposed to get married around the same time. But now, thanks to her, everyone could only talk about her marriage and her daughter. She said that her husband was still in Japan because he had a lot of work and he couldn't make it, but she had come here with her daughter because she wanted her family to meet her. But I couldn't let something like that get under my skin because I was getting married, and that was supposed to be a magical time. So even after she came back, I continued to avoid her. Unfortunately, it didn't matter anyway, because she found a way to ruin my wedding. She turned up on the day of my wedding, uninvited, just after the ceremony. I'm honestly just thankful that at least whatever happened after the ceremony was over. She crashed my wedding, and when I saw her among the guests, I almost flipped out. But Jackson and my parents helped me calm down because apparently she had snuck in, and if I made a scene, then I would just be playing right into her hands and make my wedding day all about her. So as long as she was not actively doing anything terrible, we could just let her stay and deal with it later. I was getting married at Jackson's aunt's farmhouse, so the security there wasn't tight anyway, which is how she managed to get in the first place. Now I kind of regret not spending enough money on security, because had I done so, we could have been able to avoid a lot of things. Throughout the time that she was there at the wedding, all that she was talking about was how she was incredibly lucky because of her miracle baby, and how my children were illegitimate and didn't count because I had them before marriage. It was incredibly insulting because she was saying that to everybody that she met while socializing at my wedding, and everyone who talked to her later on came up to me and told me about it, and I had to just smile and let it go because I didn't want to fight with her and ruin my own wedding. It was incredibly difficult, but I was getting through it somehow. At one point I almost lost it, but before I could even say anything, the place was stormed by the police. I had no idea what was going on, but they made us seal the exits and we were locked in. Within seconds, they had arrested Stacy, and it was really disorienting because there was a woman who was screaming and crying and holding the baby that was supposed to be my sister's and claiming that it was hers. After that, it was a blur of statements and handcuffs and stuff like that. It was not until much later that we figured out that the baby had not been her baby. Apparently, all the pictures that she had been showing us were taken from a friend's social media account, and she had photoshopped herself into it like some sicko. And the worst part of it was that all the times that she had met us with the baby, she had actually been babysitting for her friend. She had been living with her friend ever since she came back from Japan, because she had ended the lease on her own apartment and was looking for a place, so she was babysitting for free, which is why she had never invited our parents or our relatives to visit her and had only been visiting them. On the day of my wedding, she decided to take it a little far and attend my wedding without her friend's consent. What she had done was take the baby out while her friend and her husband were asleep and refused to take any calls afterward, which is why her friends had to get the cops involved and have her arrested. Thankfully, she had been talking incessantly about my wedding and how she wanted to take me down, so her friends had been able to guess where she would be, and that's how they had been able to track her down and have her arrested. It was literally crazy, and I can't believe that it happened, but it did, in my family, and I have still been having a hard time coming to terms with it. To think that Stacy was extremely competitive was one thing, but knowing that she was actually willing to go to such extreme psychotic lengths just to prove to our parents that she was better than us was very concerning. Now she is begging her friends not to press charges against her, because she's obviously not going to win that one. She'll end up in jail. So nothing has happened yet, but for some reason she's blaming me for all of this, and claims that apparently I was only getting married to rub it in her face. Now let's not forget that I haven't been in touch with her for almost 2 years, and haven't even spoken to her ever since our last interaction. I had even been gracious enough to let her crash my wedding, because I didn't want to make a scene and humiliate her. She is the one who took my wedding and turned it into something ugly. If anything, I should be the one blaming her. So yesterday, when she reached out to me and told me that I needed to convince her friends that I had driven her to do something crazy, I told her that I wish she would end up in prison because that's where she belongs. Either that or the psych ward, because she is crazy. But right now, my parents think that I need to help her out and convince her friends that she was not thinking straight, because I had been tormenting her with the news of my marriage and kids, just so that they don't press charges against her and get her arrested. So far, since she had been living with them and babysitting the infant anyway, the case is a bit more complicated, and the police haven't been able to figure out what to do about it and can't proceed without the consent of her friends. It would have been a clear-cut case of kidnapping had she not been living with them and actively taking care of their baby in their absence. But that's not the case here, so that's why she still managed to evade being jailed. And she has been claiming that they had already consented to her taking the baby with her. But there is no way yet to confirm it, so she's not in trouble yet. All we need to do is convince them, but I'm not sure I want to do that. I really don't think that she deserves any help from me of all people, but my parents think that it will be wrong on many levels for me to turn my back on her. So, am I the asshole for wanting my sister to end up in jail? Update 1. Okay, so I have decided that I'm going to cut ties with my entire family, including my parents. Yeah, they were very helpful during the pregnancy and after birth, but I'm just done with them now. I think I need my space for a while, and whether they are supportive or not is secondary to me right now. I just want to be with my husband and kids, period. And I can't do that if I'm getting caught up in their drama. So I want to be out of this because it's really messing with my head now. And I'm grateful for my parents and everything that they did after I announced that I was pregnant, but I'm just really tired of everything. As for Stacy, I think it's very obvious why I don't want to help her. She doesn't deserve my help, and she dug her grave herself so she can get out of it on her own. Jackson thinks that it's the right choice, and yeah, that's it. Update 2. So I just heard from a couple of my relatives that Stacy is in big trouble because her friends have decided that they are going to press charges and pursue this matter further. So far, Stacy has been claiming that she had her friends' consent to take the baby with her whenever she pleased, but that's going to be difficult to prove in court. And given her behavior during the wedding and how she had been claiming the child to be her own, I can't think of any way she can get out of this. It's upsetting, but honestly, I can't say that I'm surprised. I'm also not speaking to my parents currently, and I don't think I will until they tell me that what I did was the right thing, and they're sorry for asking me to help her, which is a lot to ask, but I don't want to speak to them until they realize how badly they had messed things up for Stacy and me as kids. They need to really understand that this is partly their own doing. Update 3. Hi. So Stacy is on trial right now, and we don't know what's going to happen to her, but she's looking at jail time for around 5 years now if she gets convicted. But she is mentally unstable, so that might get cut shorter. Anyway, that's not our business. So Jackson and I are still going on our honeymoon, and we are going to try and make up for a terrible wedding. I can't ask my parents to babysit because we are still not on speaking terms, so we're going to have to ask Jackson's parents to watch our children while we are away. But it's just going to be for 2 weeks, so it's not a long time. I'm just hoping that my honeymoon is better than the wedding, and I have a feeling that it's going to be, since that will just be me and Jackson.